Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sake Revolution. This is America's first sake podcast, and I am your host, John Puma from the Sake Notes, also the administrator over at that internet sake Discord, as well as Reddit's r/sake community.
And I'm your host, Timothy Sullivan. I'm a sake samurai, I'm a sake educator, as well as the founder of the Urban Sake website. And every week, John and I will be here tasting and chatting about all things sake, and doing our best to make it fun and easy to understand.
So, Tim, there's something I couldn't help but notice in our Zoom today.
What was that?
There's another guy here.
Yes, we have a VIP on the line. We are so happy to welcome our friend and sake brewer extraordinaire from Massachusetts, Mr. Todd Bellomy. Todd, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Hey, pretty good. Hello to everybody out in sake land.
Hey, welcome.
So, Todd, you know John and myself pretty well. We've known you for years. But for our listeners who have not met you before, could you give us a little bit of a self-introduction and maybe let us know briefly how you got into sake professionally?
Absolutely. My name is Todd Bellomy. I lived in Japan for a while, but after I came back to the States, I worked in the craft beer industry for 8 years. However, during that 8 years, I homebrewed a lot of beer, and I started missing really fresh sake from Japan. The sake market was not as developed as it is now, and I really started missing fresh sake. So my wife said, since you're homebrewing beer, how hard could it be to homebrew sake? And much to her chagrin, we are now sitting in New England's only sake brewery and taproom.
Now, the brewery is called Farthest Star Sake. Is that right?
It is. It's correct. Yeah.
That's a really good reason, I think, to kind of get into it. And I think that's something that Tim and I have heard on occasion from other North American brewers as well, has been the idea of like, well, we couldn't get this thing that we couldn't get the sake we were able to get in Japan. So I just got to do it myself.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, in the beer world, home brewers who become professional brewers is pretty common. And luckily I was working in the craft beer industry for so long that I had access to a laboratory and highly trained brewing professionals with dozens of years in the brewing industry. So it just made my sake better and better and better.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now you're actually coming to us live here from your tap room. What can you tell us about it? Paint us a word picture about your
absolutely. I just didn't have enough time to go home and do the podcast from home. So, we have a 6,000 square foot brewery here in Medfield, Massachusetts. It's a bit outside of Boston, maybe 45 minutes west of Boston, and in the suburbs. But we needed a lot of space, and we found this great warehouse that has 21-foot ceilings and a lot of space with loading docks and ramps that come up into the building for getting equipment in. So we turned the front 1,500 square feet of it into a tap room. So we have seating for 75 people or so. We have a bar inside of a 20-foot shipping container. And then we have a full sort of half-wall bar that looks straight into the brewery. We didn't bother to wall off the tap room or put windows between us and the brewery. The whole thing is just open. So people who come here can see exactly what we're doing in the brewery.
Wow, nice.
Awesome. So when you have customers coming in, you are outside of Boston. And what is your typical customer who comes to Farthest Star Sake to walk in your tap room?
Yeah, we see a lot of the same customers that you see in other breweries. So we see kind of people between 25 and 45 who are really interested in beverages and beverage history and how everything's made. I mean, you're coming to a tap room to drink sake, but you're also coming to a brewery. So all the manufacturing equipment is in full view. And I think the people who come here just have a real curiosity about how sake is made and what it is. Sake is an incredibly discoverable beverage, right? So most of the new consumers for sake, they're coming into it for the first time. So we get a lot of people who come here are really just looking to discover something really new.
And so those people that come in there and they come in with, I guess, a varying degrees of ideas about sake when they first arrive. What is it that you kind of wish that they knew a little bit more about?
We get a lot of two different comments. The first comment we get more than anything else is, I've only had sake when the guy at the hibachi restaurant squirts it in my mouth.
Oh no.
Absolutely. It happens every single day the tap room's open.
Okay.
And so,
all right, so my note there is hibachi a little bit more popular in Massachusetts.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of restaurants here that are in the suburbs of Boston that are fairly large restaurants. So they have a sushi bar, the whole hibachi setup, and they have a thriving alcohol drinks bar.
Nice.
And so apparently, I've never been to a hibachi place in America, but apparently the guy sometimes squirts sake from a squeeze bottle in your mouth. And so we hear that basically every day we're open. And then the other thing is, we have almost every day we're open, we have at least one person who says, I've never, ever had sake.
Wow.
And I don't know what to expect. Yeah.
Wow. So you guys are really on the front lines of educating everyday Americans for sake. What does your education program look like? What types of education are you doing in the tap room? Is it just talking with people one-on-one, or do you have classes, or what are you doing there for education?
Yeah, we haven't started classes yet, but that's something that we're currently designing. I've also talked with some existing sake educators and offered our tap room for a place for them to host their classes.
That's a great idea.
Yep. And then just talking to people at the bar, which is how a lot of people learned about a lot of drinks. So luckily, it's not quite busy yet enough that I can still work the bar. So we don't have any employees to work the bar. So my wife and I still work the bar Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I actually talk to almost every single customer who comes in.
That is direct customer feedback.
Yeah. And it's helpful for us. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nice. Now you've got your tap room set up. People come in there. They a lot of time apparently are getting either their first sake experience at all, or perhaps their first non-squeeze bottle sake experience. And they get to drink sake on tap, which is a really unique thing. When you think about sake, when I all the years of going to Japan, it's always a bottle thing in the tap room, and the actual sake from the tap is to me, in my mind, a uniquely Western sake experience. Mm-hmm. So what's some of the most popular items you've got on the tap room side of things to introduce these people to?
Yeah. So the cool thing about the tap room is that I built the brewery with the tap room in mind. So we have larger production tanks for bottling, but we do have some smaller tanks that are just for small batches and experiments and all that. So we're doing a couple of things. We have 2 bottled sake out in the world, but we have 2 additional sake here currently that aren't in bottles. You can only get at the tap room. And they're very traditionally minded sake, but they're just a different style and everything. Mm-hmm. We currently have a nigori sake with omachi rice, which we don't use in any of our bottled sake. And then we have a house genshu, so a big, full strength, no holds barred sake that we also use for warm sake in the taproom. But then in addition to that, we always keep 2 flavors of sake on. So we're also experimenting with infusing sake with flavors. Mm-hmm. So far, we opened the taproom Memorial Day weekend, so the end of May. And since then, we've never repeated a flavor.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so we're on flavor number 30. And the reason we can do that is I'm literally flavoring sake in a 20-liter keg. And then when that keg is gone, we just replace it with another keg. That's something I always wanted to do. Kind of comes from the beer world. In the old days, a lot of breweries used to put a cask of beer on, and which is a traditional carbonation and pouring method. But they would stick something else in the cask. They would take a regular beer they had and put it on coffee beans or put it on fresh hops or whatever. And then they would open that, usually Thursday night, they would tap it. And then when it was gone, it was gone. And then next week there would be something else. So I really love that kind of ephemeral nature of the flavors. We will repeat ourselves at some point because we did create some stuff that bears repeating. So
Nice.
yeah, but it's just it's a whole lot of fun, and it just gives a different aspect to sake.
Sounds fun. We have heard from other brewers in North America that do similar things, that this is like a nice way to get somebody's feet wet who might be a little bit intimidated by sake. It's like, well, here's this flavor that you're familiar with.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It gives somebody that is a non-sake fan or has no idea about sake, it gives them a bridge, to go, oh, well, you have a sake on infused with coffee. I like coffee. I'll try that, that kind of thing. And then, of course, flights are probably the most important, and for educational tool, but also just popularity of customers buying it. You get 3 smaller pours in a flight instead of a full glass of sake, and that allows people to try 3 different things.
Nice.
Yeah, that really takes some of the risk out of it for customers, right? They don't have to order a whole glass of something, not knowing if they're going to like it or hate it. And the little samples are great. What's some examples of some of the flavored sakes that you've done in the past that were really popular? I'm just kind of curious.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. Right now, we actually have a super popular sake on. It's unfiltered sake, so nigori, with ube, which is a purple sweet potato from the Philippines. So not only does it have like these beautiful kind of sweet cotton candy notes and things like that, but it's like shockingly purple. I had a conversation with a good friend of ours who's an artist, Dan, my friend Dan Golden, and I ended up making these notes a couple of years ago about this conversation we had, and I created a sake out of it. And so that's our most popular sake flavor-wise, was called Dang Orange, and it was fresh orange peel, nectaron, hops, and chilies. So it was like really bright and citrusy, but then had a little heat at the back.
Wow.
To answer your question even more, sorry. We've done coffee, maple, pomegranate, blueberry. I did pear, elderflower. I've done, you name it. We've done honey and shichimi, which is a chili-based spice from Japan. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the sky is the limit.
Totally. The sky's the limit. My only thing as a brewer with flavored sake is that our flavored sakes have to still taste like sake. Right? The flavor can't overwhelm the brew. You've got to get both things in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now you sell these infused sakes and some things on tap that are super fresh, but you also have 2 sakes. You mentioned you have a little bit larger tanks there where you're making 2 sakes for distribution in Massachusetts only, right?
Right. So we have a filtered, drier, more complex style, and then we have an unfiltered, fruitier, sweeter, rounder style. And that's, to me, kind of both ends of the spectrum of what we'd like to build as a market.
Nice.
Well, I've got some good news. John and I both have these sakes in front of us.
Right.
So if you'll indulge us, we'd love to taste these sakes together with you.
Absolutely. I did want to mention, so we, for our bottled sake currently, both are made with Yamada Nishiki 70%. So they're both kind of the bottom of premium sake, and all of our rice comes from Isbell Farms in Arkansas. So our koji is always Yamada Nishiki. So if I use nigori that's made with omachi that we have on draft, it still has Yamada Nishiki koji.
Now, before we even open this bottle here, I have to remark on the branding.
Yes.
Farthest Star Sake. And the branding is distinctly sci-fi in nature. What inspired you to go this route? And I also want to remark, of course, on the bottle size as well. This is 207 milliliters. So it's a small single serving bottle size. What's behind that as well?
Yeah. So I really wanted our sake brewery to be about accessibility. And when I was trying to come up with a brand, I, of course, am a huge sci-fi nerd, but I was trying to come up with a cool brand, and everybody who comes in the tap room, sake is new to them. They're embarking on this cool journey. And all of my favorite sci-fi that I watch is about this real call to adventure, right? And so there's a hero and he lives in the middle of nowhere, and there's a real call to adventure. And often there's a time where they're looking up to the stars thinking there's got to be something better up there for me. There's this, it's so far away. And then when they get up there into space and have all their adventures, they realize there's like a whole universe beyond where they thought was this incredibly far away thing. So, we thought Farthest Star was kind of cool as like an aspirational, that kind of call to adventure branding. The other thing I do want to remark on, because I'm such a nerd, is that a lot of great sci-fi to me is both new and old at the same time. And so is sake, right? Sake is this kind of really old beverage tradition, but in America, it's like the next thing. It's like right on the cusp of becoming this next thing. And so great sci-fi is the same way. I mean, Star Wars is the best example, right? It's a long, long time ago in a galaxy far away, right? So it's a long, long time ago, but they have spaceships. So I feel like, there's a lot of parallels there for sci-fi and sake.
Nice. All right. So,
all right.
As Tim pointed out, the bottle size is a little bit unique, but so is the shape.
Yeah. So I love single serve packaging. Also, an astute observer of the sake industry in America will note that single serve packaging is really flying off store shelves. Larger bottles, not as fast. And so it's because of its smaller size, you can keep the price lower and the cost of entry for new drinkers is lower and allows people to just try it, Yeah.
I like it.
Okay, John, do you want to give us the stats for the first sake in a strange land?
That sounds like a great idea. So, In a Strange Land is a junmai using Yamanishi milled down to 70% of its original size. The sake meter value is +5, so a touch dry. And the alcohol percentage is 16%.
Anything that inspired the name In a Strange Land?
Stranger in a Strange Land is one of my favorite science fiction books of all time.
Right.
And how much stranger could we get than a guy that looks like me making sake in Massachusetts?
All right.
Well, excellent.
Okay, so we've got it in the glass. So talk us through what we should look for here.
Yeah. In a Strange Land is made with hard water and 2 yeast strains. So we use 901 and 1601.
Right.
And so we've got some of the kind of strawberry fruitiness from 901 and a little bit of the spiciness from 1601. And I just really wanted to make an approachable sake that had a lot of complexity. So a lot of fruit and spice in the nose, super duper clean, dry finish, and a little bit of richness coming from Yamada Nishiki and the fact that we're using hard water for this particular sake.
All right. Well, let's give it a smell.
Let's do it.
It does smell a little bit fruity.
There is, but it's the stone fruits, not the tropical fruits.
Right.
Yeah, the aroma is not overly simple either. It feels like there's some complexity there. I get a little bit of a rice note as well, so it's not like overwhelmingly fruity. There's great balance there. So let's give it a taste.
Thanks.
Tim, the first thing that registers with me on this is the texture, the mouthfeel.
Yeah. So super hard water. So we actually filter all of our water in the brewery and then modify the water chemistry per style in the tank.
Wow.
So that allows us.
Seriously?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
It's a thing that's very common in the beer world. So that allows us to make a variety of styles of sake and modify the water chemistry for what we want. Yeah.
It's very smooth. And what strikes me initially is that the finish is really clean and seems like it's a refreshing kind of finish, and it would be very good with food and just a nice round mouthfeel as well.
Yeah, thanks.
So there's no wateriness it's not too light. There's a good weight on the front of the palate, and then it finishes clean and pretty refreshing. And it's overall kind of a cleaner style. Is that how you would describe it? Or
yeah, absolutely. The change to using Yamada Nishiki 70.
Mhm.
Some of the sake I've brewed in the past is Yamada Nishiki 60 or lower. And I kind of like that junmai style. You can make a super clean sake, but it still has like a little backbone. It still has some richness. You kind of need that to hold up against some of the foods that we eat, especially here in the Northeast, right? So, this and basically anything you take off the grill, steaks and chicken and that kind of fried clams is really awesome. Pizza and tacos and all those kinds of things. So, yeah.
So this must be like a real foundational sake for your brewery. Like you can build a lot of things off of this, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I would love to try to brew something like this with some different yeast strains. See how, to show customers how different yeast affects the brew. But yeah, it's really what I wanted to brew as a brewer. Like this is the kind of sake I want to drink on a daily basis.
So if I come into the tap room, can I get In a Strange Land as well? Or is this only available in the bottles?
Oh, no. We have In a Strange Land and our other flagship sake, Mountains on the Moon, on draft all the time.
Okay, great.
And depending on when you come into the tap room, we might have some fun things like a single keg of In a Strange Land, but Nama. Or we might have a single keg of In a Strange Land with the alcohol unadjusted.
Nice.
Well, that's even more motivation, John, for us to get to the tap room.
That's right.
All we have to do is get up to Boston and then 45 minutes. We're there.
That's right.
All right. Well, we have one more sake.
You drive, Tim.
We have one more sake to taste. John, do you want to give us the stats for the second sake we're tasting?
Sure. The second sake we're going to talk about today is Mountains on the Moon. This one also uses that Yamada Nishiki, also milled to 70%. But this one is a nigori, and the sake meter value is -10. So we're looking at something pretty sweet. And the alcohol percentage is 14. It brings it down a couple of notches.
So I got to say -10 with caveats. It is
with caveats too. I like caveats.
Yeah, that's right. With caveats, by the way, might be a name of a sake. So, anyways,
that sounds amazing.
I'm going to write that down right now. So, yeah, Mountains on the Moon. I got to say, before I brewed sake, I didn't really care for nigori sake. A lot of the Japanese nigori, like the traditional stuff, it's well crafted. It's just not what I personally want to drink. It's kind of heavy and sweet. And then because it's sake, there's nowhere else to go. From brewing a lot of nigori, because customers really like it, I sort of developed, I don't want to call it my own style, because I can't imagine that I'm the first person to do it. But my particular expression of nigori, I use super soft water.
Mm-hmm.
And so I use water straight out of the filter without adjustment. And what that does is it gives you a sake with a slightly higher acid. And so the acid actually helps balance out the -10. So start sweet, still has that round thing, but it's a little more light, and that makes it a little more food friendly, a little more drinkable to me.
And therein lies the caveat.
That's right.
All right. Well, I've got mine mixed up, I think.
So, Mountains on the Moon. Anything behind this name of this cloudy sake?
It's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek name, but nigori sake has always been linked to the full moon viewing festival in Japan.
That's true, yeah.
Because you're looking into a glass of white opaque liquid. And we use a yeast from Japan for this sake that, let's just say, is a mountainous yeast. I won't say anything more about it, but let's say it's that's the yeast. So it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek combination of those two things.
Got it. All right. So this is nigori, cloudy style. So it's opaque in the glass, kind of pearlescent white in color. Let's give it a smell.
You're looking for fruit. And rice.
And rice, yes.
Definitely. Yeah. First thing I got was the rice.
Yeah, it's pretty ricey. Not so much in the flavor, but the aroma. Yeah, it's really ricey.
And there's the fruit. The fruit's there.
It's there. The funny thing is, when I smell it, I just smell the brewery. It just smells like the brewery when you're brewing sake.
So it has a wonderfully creamy mouthfeel to it. It does coat the palate a little bit. and has a nice creaminess, bit of a longer finish than the In a Strange Land junmai for me. But again, very balanced, very smooth, very clean. Nothing that is going to affront anybody. Like this is approachable nigori.
That's, exactly what I want to do as a brewer.
Yes.
Right. I want to make sake for everybody.
Yeah.
I don't want to make sake for people who just have a proclivity to learn all the nerdy stuff about sake. Those people are awesome. But like, you got to have your regular people living out here in the suburbs drinking sake too.
Yeah. Now, I got to ask you, John, follow up on the -10. This is a SMV -10. That's, again, the gravity of the sake or the density of the sake. And normally that would be an indication, you may want to look for some sweetness here. John, what do you think about the sugar profile?
Well, I think the caveats that Todd mentioned are definitely in full effect here. It does not present as, we've had some -10 sake on the show before, and, in our lives, probably even more than that. And this does not present that way. It's as we've seen this trick before, that sometimes the acidity can counterbalance and lead to just a nice clean, fun to drink sake. It's still, the sweetness is still there. Absolutely. It doesn't drink like a typical nigori, as I believe we've all pointed out at this point. It does have a lot more, I hate to use the word lightness to it, but a bit more light. It's lighter than your typical nigori, even though it is pretty cloudy. Like it is not lacking in particulate.
Yeah, some of that is how we make it. So our presses the sake out clear. And there's no way, without changing over the entire press, there's no way to have the sake come out cloudy. And so what we do is we hand sieve a portion of the moromi, the mash, into the holding tank. And then when the clear sake comes out and goes in the tank, it mixes with that much thicker sieved out liquid. And so because we're doing that by hand with stainless steel screens, we can vary the screen size and control the amount of thicker stuff we put in the tank. So not only can I control the amount of particulate in the brew, but I can control the size of the particles.
Nice.
And so we are specifically doing a certain size screen at a certain amount to achieve, this.
Very cool. Very cool. Todd, thank you very much for sipping with us. I have a question though. What's next for Farthest Star Sake? What's next for the Taproom? What's next for Todd Bellomy?
So for the Taproom, we're just trying to increase the number of food pop-ups we have.
Oh.
Since we're in the suburbs, people really we have chefs who come pop up in our tap room. Last weekend, we had a hot dog pop up for Rada's Plate. And we're starting to build a roster of pop up chefs in the tap room, which is really great. It just gives people another dimension and reason to come to the tap room. For Farthest Star Sake, we're in 85 accounts and we're trying to build that roster as quick as we can. And we're starting to talk to distributors to get our sake out of state. So we will hopefully by the summertime be in a few other New England states around us.
Awesome.
And what's next for me is another 100-hour week in a warehouse.
Well, I have to ask you if you would consider a Sake Revolution pop-up some weekend. How about that, John?
That would be amazing. I mean, we could do a live podcast from the tap room. That would be, I'm 100% in favor of that.
Excellent,
all right.
Excellent.
Well, if people want to learn more about Farthest Star Sake, where to find you, or learn more about you, where can people find you on the web and on the socials?
Absolutely. So farthestsstarsake.com is our website. There's a logbook on there, which is kind of like a blog. And there are buttons in the top right-hand corner for all of our socials. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, including an email icon that just comes to me because no one else would really answer it.
When you're not at the bar or making the sake, you're answering the emails too.
That's right. Sometimes I'm doing 2 or 3 of those things concurrently. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. Todd, it's been so nice to talk with you, learn about Farthest Star Sake, and to taste your delicious sakes. This was a great nigori and a fabulous junmai. Congratulations for everything you've achieved in under a year. This is amazing.
Yeah, thank you. We had a couple construction setbacks, but super happy to be open, and getting people hyper fresh sake is just the best job in the world.
Well, congratulations again. So good to taste with you, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
And I'd also like to take a moment and thank our patrons. And if you would like to learn more, you can visit patreon.com/Sake Revolution to learn how you can support the revolution.
And another way that you can support our show is through the wonderful world of leaving reviews on Apple Podcasts. Believe it or not, it gets that word out even more than telling your friends and your family, which we know you love to do.
And if you would like to see our show notes, be sure to visit sakerevolution.com. We'll have all the links to learn about Farthest Star Sake and where you can find Todd on the web. And we also have a wonderful transcript of each and every episode, so be sure to check out our website as well.
So until next time, please raise a glass. Remember to keep drinking sake and
Kanpai!